Okay, everyone. So in our last little lecture, we went through creating this dog object in the loader in, similar to the homework 2. Again, if you're okay with this stuff, it's a bit redundant, that's fine. But what I want to do now is create this dog kind of daycare or dog organizer and a class that automates this process for us. So what I could do here is actually go ahead and create a new class, and I'll call it dog daycare, something like this. And it's going to be its own instance of a class where I don't want to go ahead and inherit from the dog class up here. I'm just going to make it itself. And what I want to do is essentially when I create this object as my init, I want to provide it a txt file. And what it will do is automatically run this load dogs function. And I want to be able to essentially have a way to say, okay, give me the age of every dog inside the daycare right now, stuff like that. So what it's going to do is work in tandem with this dog object up here, but it's going to be its own abstract data type. It's going to be this type of container for dog objects. So to go ahead and do that, what I'll do here is if I want to just provide it a file right away, I'm going to go ahead and create a file attribute like so. And what I mean by file now, instead of doing this load dogs functions like we're used to, I'm going to say something like daycare is equal to dog daycare. What I'll provide is dogs.txt to it like this. Okay. Oh, let me scroll. Make my head a bit smaller. Okay. Cool. So now I have daycare is equal to dog daycare, dogs.txt. And very easily, I already did the work for this guy and it's working okay. I'm just going to move him in a little bit because I don't want to redo all of it. And you'll notice here that now this load dogs method is actually built into my dog daycare class. Okay. And we can see that here is that if I do daycare, we'll see I have a dog daycare object, daycare dot load dogs. If I run this one, I'll get an error right away because I forgot to put in myself up there. So let me go ahead and just provide it as a self. And let's actually redo our method here of load dogs. Instead of using a file name, I'm going to say load dogs. And what I want to do is instead of using file name here, I'll say open up self.file, whichever file I provide for it. That's really the only thing that we need to change here. And let's see if this still gives us an error. Let's say A is equal to, or excuse me, I created an object called daycare, daycare.loadDogs. Looks like I'm actually able to get all these objects back right away when I load in my dogs. And the reason that they're printing out might just be because it's returning all the dogs for me. So now I can also say something like A is equal to daycare.loadDogs. Okay. Now, this is fine for the time being, but let's say that I want to make this a bit more advanced. I don't want to just have that printed out for me right away. What I would like to do is say, okay, I know that there's a daycare here. Can I do something that says for dog in daycare, print dog.getAge or something? So now what I want to do here, maybe let's do get name because get age gave me a weird error previously, like so. Can I do something like this? We'll see here that we get this weird type error that says type error dog daycare object is not iterable. So what does that mean? Essentially what's happening is that the doggy daycare object doesn't have any type of way to keep track of all these objects in a container type of an object. It doesn't have something to do that for us. How do we iterate over something? Well, we already know that sets, dictionaries, and lists are iterable built into Python. So what we could do here is not only take in the file from this item here, but I want to actually move this all dogs thing outside of this load dogs method. Essentially what I'll be doing here is create a container that the entire manager class has access to. Now what does that mean? Essentially what I could say here is self.allDogs is equal to an empty container. Now, why am I doing this here? If I have self.allDogs equal to an empty container, what that would mean is that every time I load in a file, I'm going to have access to this guy of all dogs here, okay? And now let's try to run our code here. If I do daycare again, we'll see that I have this guy. I'm going to go ahead and daycare already, let's see, I don't know if it loaded my dogs in here. Should I load dogs? I believe I forgot one thing here. Self.file. Oh, return all dogs. So I'm going to actually remove this return statement down here because all dogs isn't defined. I'm just going to append the objects into here. Let's refresh this. We'll see here that my method of all dogs is empty. Excuse me, my attribute of all dogs is empty. Let me go ahead and try to load my all dogs object. Run that method. Now, fortunately, we have this daycare of all dogs where each of them are placed into my object there. Now, can I do something daycare.allDogs of 0? I'm actually getting the 0th dog here. Now, let me see if I can get the name. Looks like I'm also getting the name. Let me try to get the age. Looks like I'm also getting the age there. This is great, right? So now I'm able to have a container object, but you'll notice that like this looks very complicated, right? I'm getting my daycare, I'm getting the 0th index of it, then I'm getting a get name. This is too much for someone who's new. Let's just say that someone wants to go up to the daycare and say, can you give me the name of every dog that's in here right now? What they might say is something like, for dog in daycare, print dog.getName. Let's say it like that. Fortunately, we still have this issue of a type error. Doggy daycare object is not iterable. How do we fix this? Well, what you'll need to do essentially in Python is tell Python to override the current iterative method of my object. So what we're going to do is override the iter method. This method returns an iterable object when called. So essentially, if this method isn't given any information, if you don't override it, Python will automatically be like, okay, well, there's no iterable method, there's no iterable object a part of this class. If we override this iter method, what Python will say is if at any point someone calls a while loop or a for loop on this object, go ahead and check if there's an iter method. If there is an iter method, do what it says to us. Okay. So essentially what we could do here is, what is the thing that we want to iterate over? We don't want to iterate over the doggy daycare class itself. What we want to iterate over are the all dogs that are built into this daycare class. We want to iterate over the list of dogs that we found. So let's try to simply return self.allDogs, which was that attribute we created up here. Let's try to run this guy. I have my daycare object. Daycare.allDogs is empty. Daycare.loadDogs, let's load in my dogs. Okay, I have my dogs loaded in. For dog in daycare, print dog.getAge. Now we'll see here that we get another little bit of an issue. Type error iter returned non-iterator of type list. So there's one more little thing we have to do here, which is just what Python requires us to do. Self.allDogs right now is a list object, but Python isn't considering it iterable. So what you need to do is cast this guy to be iterable as an iterator object. Again, we've seen this in the Q class quite a bit as well last week. But again, what's happening here is going to return an iterative version of this list of items. So you're essentially going to give it the key to say, you know what, this guy can be iterated over, and it's a self.allDogs. So let's go ahead and try to run this one more time. Daycare is created. Let's load in our dogs. For dog and daycare, print dog. Nice, right? So now I'm getting all of them. Can I get a bit more advanced with this? What access of methods does my dog have access to? You can get the name. And now I have this very nice abstract data type called daycare that keeps track of all of my dog objects, okay? So again, this is in general what you'll need for assignment tree a little bit with overriding iterators and making sure they work. If you're getting an error with iterative methods, make sure that you try to return an attribute that's iterative over and most likely put it inside of here. Now, I only loaded in these dog files. You're also going to have a scenario where you have to write out to a file as well. Let's go ahead and say write dogs like so. What we could say here is another try and accept like usual. And what I can also do here is say, okay, so f is equal to open self.file. And I'm going to open it in the mode of writing. You'll notice that self.file, I actually forgot to provide the R up there. Make sure that you always provide the type of mode that you're going to use. For this instance, it defaulted to read, so it's not a huge deal. I'm going to open this file with the writing scenario. And what I can do now here is that essentially you can do whatever you want. I'm just going to write out each of the dogs as full items there. What I could say is for dog in self.allDogs. So now I'm accessing this attribute here. I'm going to say f.write. Let's go ahead and just write the dog to it. And then I'll go ahead and close it after I do that. Let me print out an error if something weird happens, like so. And what I'm going to do is, instead of opening self.file, so if I open up self.file, it's going to override dogs.txt. Let me make this daycare.txt. So I'm going to open up a daycare.txt, and I'm going to write the dogs that I encounter there. Daycare.loadDogs. Daycare.writeDogs. Looks like we're getting an error. So if you're encountering an error that happens here, let's go ahead and try to remove the try and accept to actually print out what that error is. I'm also going to automate my load dogs method real quick. Write argument must be string, not dog. So what's happening now is that I'm getting the string representation of this guy back. Let's actually convert this guy to a string really quick instead of just being a dog object. Now it looks like it's working, and if I take a look at my desktop, I have a daycare.txt created. And voila, looks like I have each of these guys printed out. My format's a little ugly, so what you could do here is a little trick to showcase it, is that what you could do is each time that you write out a dog object, you can also write out a new line item. And what the new line guy will do for us is that each time I do the print statement of my dog, I put in a new line. So now I'm writing out to my daycare as well. Okay, cool. So this is the most complicated part, I would say, for your assignment tree is this guy, getting him to work and how it works with these guys. But just make sure you review it, and if you have any questions, let me know.